had what I thought was a stressful or difficult childhood. I was abused by somebody outside of my family. And I just felt very unloved and unwanted and dirty because of that. And I didn't really even have a name for what had happened to me. I just knew that I was bad and that I had deserved that. But I was lucky that my parents sent me to a private Christian school. And while they didn't go to church and they weren't active in the church, they allowed some lovely teachers to come get me from the house and take me to church, that I felt comfortable and safe and loved and accepted and not dirty. So I was lucky that I found God, and I had those moments in my life, and I accepted God at a very, very young age. I can't even tell you how old I was because the memory is a childhood memory. But I was baptized at 15. I kept going to that church all through high school. But as an adult, I made choices that I thought made me unacceptable to God. You know, I had sex outside of marriage. I got pregnant. My marriage failed. I got a divorce. I got married again. That marriage failed. And at a certain point, I just assumed that the God and that the Jesus I knew when I was a child couldn't love me because I had made so many mistakes. And this wasn't the life that I had planned for myself as a young girl. And it wasn't, you know, I was so lucky to have Jesus find me and claim me as a child. And I knew it, that I felt like I had disappointed him as an adult and he wouldn't want me. So I had been married and divorced multiple times. I had 3 children. I was a single mom. I was working every job known to man, sometimes 3 jobs at a time, really struggling to make ends meet. And every man I dated would want to date me and have sex with me, or date, you know, without having a relationship. But they didn't want to marry me because they didn't want what they would say was baggage. And so it just kind of echoed what I was saying to myself internally. And I was living that way. And it was not happy. It was not fun, but that was just what I thought I deserved for all of the choices that I had made. The turning point came. I had just gotten, finally, a great job. It was a great job. It was a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job. The boss thought I was great. I was doing well. I was excelling. And he was paying me enough to where I could feed my kids and, you know, maybe buy them a pair of shoes when they needed them. So I thought I was in heaven. And I found out I was pregnant. And it was with a man that I barely knew. And I didn't know what I was going to do because I didn't want to call in sick for work. I didn't want to tell anybody. All I wanted to do was just make it go away. And I knew that if I thought about it too much, that I would realize it was the wrong thing to do. I knew it was the wrong thing to do, but I rushed right into it and made a few calls. Interestingly enough, you mentioned one of the people that you spoke to had a pregnancy center that they worked at. I knew instinctively not to call that pregnancy center because they would tell me the truth. I called the one that you call when you want an abortion. And so that's what I did. And I did it as fast as I could. And as soon as the type of abortion I had was a pill, as soon as I took the pill, I knew that I had done wrong, and I felt it in my spirit. There is definitely, without a doubt, a invisible spiritual life that you end, and you can feel it. I personally felt it, and I knew it was wrong, and I knew at that point I definitely was not worthy of that Jesus who loved me as a child. And so I began this journey into just total darkness at that point. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the world. All I could do was just throw myself into work. I resented my children because I made this terrible choice to protect them, I thought, from more financial burden and less time with me and all of this struggle. So it was really hard to be a mother. It was really hard to be a daughter because I couldn't tell my mother. It was difficult to do anything. It was easy to work. So I did a great job at work. But it was very hard to be anything other than that person at work at that point in my life. And so I just plummeted into this state of depression and darkness, and I was having terrible dreams, and the enemy was really haunting me and making me feel like, you know, it was not worth really me being alive. And, you know, the only thing that kept me going during that time was knowing that if something did happen to me, my 3 kids who were here wouldn't have anybody. And, but I remember driving home from work and thinking, if you just drive in the garage and shut the door, the kids are with their dad, you know, you can go to sleep and you don't have to wake up. And when I started having those thoughts, that was a Friday, my kids were all gone for the weekend. When I started having those thoughts, something kicked in that was like, there's something really wrong here. And so I went inside my house and I cried and I ran a hot bath and I sat on the floor and I was in tears, and something inside of me cried out to God. And the minute I cried out to God, I don't even remember if there was a word. I just cried out to God. And the minute I did, I felt Jesus's arms wrap around from behind me. And it's hard to discuss, but I didn't say forgive me. I didn't say I'm sorry. I just called for him and he was there. And later on, as I was praying and speaking to Jesus, I said, you know, how could you accept me? How could you accept me when I did such a terrible thing? How could you love me when I did such a terrible thing? You know, did you even know that I did what I did? And he said, I was there. I was there the whole time. And not only that, I was there when you were abused as a child. I was there when you didn't get along with your parents. I was there when when your marriages failed. I was always there. I never didn't accept you. That was a lie that you believed. That wasn't something that I told you. I love you, and I was always there. And I will always be there. So I prayed for forgiveness. And, you know, obviously Jesus accepted me back and he lifted me to a place of peace that I hadn't known in a long time. But I still felt, I had murdered somebody. I still felt dirty and like I could never repay. You know, I just felt wrong. And so, you know, as Satan always does, when you make some good progress, he sends some people to try to drag you back. So he sent all sorts of people back into my life to distract me and grab my interest. He brought back some love interests in my life that were probably not good choices. And while I was being tempted to date those people, I met my now husband. And when I met him, I was not interested in him at all because I thought he wasn't my type. Then, when I dated him a few times, because God just kept nudging me like, hey, just try this, you know? I dated him a few times. Then I realized the reason I wasn't interested in him is because I just knew if he knew who I was inside, he wouldn't want anything to do with me, because how could he? He was a missionary. He got kicked out of India for sharing the word of God. He's a Christian girl's dream guy. Like, this is the guy that you want to marry when you're a Christian. He wouldn't kiss me. He wouldn't touch me. He wouldn't hold my hand. He brought me flowers. He was respectful to my parents. You know, this is the guy that every girl wants, but when he knew my secret, he wouldn't want me. So he decided that he was interested in me and told me that he was serious about me. And I was like, oh goodness, I'm going to have to tell him the truth because I can't lie. And then he's not going to want to have anything to do with me. So I sucked it up and I told him. And when I told him, he pulled this piece of paper out of his pocket. It's going to make me cry. I still have the paper. He pulled it out of his pocket, and it was Proverbs 31. And he had highlighted when he decided, when he was in India, before he got kicked out, God had put a desire in his heart for a wife. And when he had come home, he prayed about it, and he pulled up Proverbs 31, and we all know the verses, and he highlighted the traits of a woman that he was looking for. And then as he was dating me, he went through and underlined each of the highlighted trait as he saw it in me. And he said, Julie, I'm glad you told me, your story, but this is who you are. That is not who you are. This is who you are. When you did this, I saw this trait in you, so I underlined it. And when you told me about this, I saw this trait in you, and I underlined it. You are this woman. You are not your choices in the past. And I don't know why it took a human for me to understand what Jesus was trying to tell me all along, but it set me free. And since then, it's just been an amazing journey. When I got that letter from my husband, I told him I loved him. He told me he loved me. And, shortly thereafter we were married. And I think I realized at that point that God had done a miracle in my life, not by giving me a handsome husband that is my dreamboat, but by cleaning me and redeeming me and forgiving me and taking this weight and this burden of guilt off of me that was keeping me back from my dreams and from what he had wanted me to do. So once all those things were removed, I was able to say, God, what do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want me to do? And that's when, everything else came about in my life, and writing and the ministry and all of that. But the big thing that happened for me was God forgiving me from this terrible thing that's just even unimaginable to think about now. When I think what I did back then, I can't even imagine making that same choice, but I know I probably. So I sat down and I started to write this book. And every Christmas since I've known my husband, he doesn't like things. He hates to collect things. So I asked him, every Christmas, what can I get you for Christmas? And he would always say, a book. Get me your book, your first book. I want your first book. So that year I sat down and I wrote earnestly with the word goal every day. And a couple of days before Christmas, he met me at the door and I gave him a thumb drive and it had a book on it. And that was my first book. And I had this idea to write about this girl who struggles with the loss of her parents and, takes their boat out and falls off the boat and meets God while she's in the water waiting to be rescued. Jesus was just always there. He was that person that was always by my side looking out for me. And he guided me through those years. And if he had not been there, I don't know what would have happened to me. So he was always there. He was always caring for me and loving me. And then as an adult, when I wanted to come back to having a relationship with Jesus, it was the exact same Jesus that I had when I was a child. He was there. He didn't judge me. He didn't tell me I've been bad. He didn't scold me. He just loved me. He was just there. And he was telling me, I'm here. You don't have to be alone. And I love you just as you are. And that's what I always wanted and what I always needed to hear. And he still is that Jesus today.
Julie has completed 2 novels. She is president of her local Word Weavers chapter, and she has published a 30-day devotional titled Abba's Heart. You can see more at juliechristian.com.